heard about you for ages, and I've never had the chance to meet you.
Oh, thank you. And I have your new book, by the way. Thank you so much. I've been reading it, Urban Tantra. And I've just, you know, what's wonderful is that I started, and I have to show this, by the way. I started writing in your book and making little notes about everything in it, which I loved.
Oh my goodness.
I'm very big on writing and scribbling and
good
and doing stuff.
But look how much you liked. Thank you. I'm flattered.
I know. I started going, okay, I'm starting to like underline everything.
Oh, wow.
And then making and my big passage, which I would like to read in a few minutes.
Okay.
But and your new book, but I want you to tell me, for our viewers, what's Tantra?
Tantra is often misunderstood, not only in our culture, but just in general. Tantra is a really, 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 really big subject and very, very ancient. It's a spiritual practice. It's not a sexual practice. However, it's one of the few spiritual practices that fully embraces all of life as a path to the divine, to enlightenment, to spiritual awakening, including sexuality. Most spiritual practices prior to Tantra, which is between hundreds of years old and thousands, depending on when you start counting. But most spiritual practices, or many organized spiritual practices, are renunciate, meaning they tell you what you have to renounce in order to become spiritually enlightened. Tantra says, no, you're beings in a physical body, and you can use the physical to consciously explore and come to realization of the divine, and one of those things you can use is sex. Right. So you can see that only a small part of the huge spiritual practice that is Tantra is about sex, but in our age, where sex has been so ignored, so abused, so denigrated, so completely trampled upon and ignored.
Exactly.
The part of Tantra that applies to sex is particularly relevant for our time. That's why I called my book Urban Tantra. I didn't want to mislead anyone into thinking that this was...
And it's not the traditionally based, which I saw in your book. You bring out so many other things. Like some of the topics that you had in there was learning how to touch, conscious quickies.
Yes.
I really like that one.
We live in a busy world.
We do. And sometimes we don't have, you know, the 3-hour thing.
That's right.
You know, my joke is every 3 quickies equal 1 longie.
That's right.
So, but you also had the solo tantra and the tantra BDSM, which these are all fascinating pieces all in and of itself.
I wrote Urban Tantra because so many people were feeling excluded from what had been marketed in America as Tantra. It tended to be aimed at or owned by white, middle class, heterosexual, new age workshop junkies. That was the image of Tantra. And I wanted everyone to understand that no matter what your sexual preference, what who you were, what gender you were, even if you're transgender, what your sexual proclivities were, you could practice Tantra.
You can, and you don't have to be physically fit.
Yes.
Which is another piece that I love that you pointed out as well. You don't have to have the great body or be able to get into these big yoga positions or move, hold the breath in forever. You can just be you.
Tantra is, for Urban Tantra, is about looking at sex not as something we do, an action we perform, a goal, but rather as an energy we allow. And that's really just learning how to open up and let the energy flow. It's not getting into strange positions. It's not chanting funny Sanskrit words. Yeah. It's just becoming conscious of what makes sexual energy move in the body.
Right. And the piece that I love about it too, and the piece that you really mentioned in here, was that you're consciously doing it. You're making a decision to be conscious of what you're doing. So the learning how to touch, you're conscious of where are you touching, where are your hands, how are you breathing, how are you connecting, so that you can not only do it to yourself, which I really recommend everyone to do, is doing the piece for yourself, but you're also learning how to do it with your partner. You're learning pieces on your partner's body, whether male or female, or more than one individual. you're learning how to connect. And that's really what it's about. It's about connecting. It's about being conscious. And I love what you wrote in your book here. It said, it's easier to explore sex in a country founded by convicts than one founded by Puritans.
Yes, I worked in Australia for many years. Yes, and boy, was that true.
And it is amazing how much more open Europe is than America. Totally. Because we have been fed this piece of how bad sex is and how, you know, how prim and proper you have to be from the day we're born.
Dangerous sex is.
Yes. And it's only dangerous when we have the information we need withheld.
That's right.
I remember when I was 30.